Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. If you have an interest in this topic we're going to talk about, it may have caught your eye. The topic of, is your leadership pipeline failing you? I suspect that means that you've been attuned to paying attention to developing your leaders, but you may not be getting quite the results that you're looking for. So I'm Peg Rowe with Tierra, and I'm international, and I'm going to have my partner, Beth Ruske, with me today. And we're going to explore this idea of how do you ensure that your leadership pipeline is actually developing the results that you're looking for.
Peg, this topic is one where people get defensive pretty quickly because they'll say things like, we've spent the last 10 years having mentoring programs and mentoring women and doing all this stuff. But what you and I know is that they've been focused on the wrong thing. They've been focused on getting women, into their leadership pipeline, but not getting them through their leadership pipeline. That only gets them the visibility of these potential leaders, but it doesn't do anything to advance the promotability of these women leaders. And it's not just women, it's also underrepresented populations.
Yep. So that really brings up a great question. So we've got these full pipelines, and yet we're not getting the results we want. So what are the ways that we move from this idea of visibility to promotability?
Well, I think one of the things that, we've noticed is that they have to, whatever program the organization is engaged in, they have to make sure the leaders themselves in the pipeline are what we call ready now, that they're putting themselves in a position to be ready to be promoted. And we hear a lot of times from the senior leaders in these organizations that these potential leaders or these leaders with potential, I should say, to be advanced, they're not quite ready yet.
Yeah.
And we hear that yet an awful lot, like they're not ready yet. They need more experience. They need more this, they need more exposure. But yet is such a dangerous word. When you hear yet, Peg, can you think of like all the women that we've, coached and worked with over the years that have been told that?
I mean, it goes on and on and on. And these women are in a couple of different camps. They're either anxious and wanting to get promoted, or they're hearing that message and saying, oh, okay, I just guess I need to get better and better at my job.
Right.
And so they create what we call their own competency trap, where they perfect their job to a level of mastery that is remarkable, but it's not positioning them to get promoted.
Yeah. And then the companies actually keep them in their positions too long. Right. And, it's then these women don't actually grow in both the experience and the confidence to actually move and position themselves for the next spot. Right.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, that, it's a shared responsibility. The individual women have some, and other leaders have some responsibility, but the company does as well to identify where they may be inadvertently contributing to stalling women in their careers.
Yeah. Now there's some things that companies can do, and they do well, not everybody, but the first thing is make sure that these talented leaders are connected through both formal and informal mentors in the organization and outside of the organization throughout the industry. And I think another thing that they can do is they can turn their mentors into advocates and sponsors. So mentoring alone does not do it. So it's great to have mentoring programs, but one of our phrases has always been mentoring done well creates sponsorship.
Yes.
Mentoring for the sake of mentoring just shares knowledge, right? We're talking about moving through the leadership pipeline. So that's a second thing. I think the third thing is that the organizations need to look at what are some of the hidden obstacles that are in the way. So where are we hearing leaders say things like, oh, they're close, but they're not ready yet? And that unconscious bias that is continuing, throughout the organization. So I know we've kicked around some of those, things to look for. What are some of the things that, come top of mind when we're talking about some of those obstacles that, organizations and women, face?
Well, I think one of them is leaders who may be excellent leaders, but they're not especially good at developing the leaders underneath who are working for them. And that just doesn't happen to be their strength. It's
No.
not that they're a bad leader, they're a great leader, but they don't develop others in the way that this needs to be occurring. Sometimes they're really happy to have their top talent in their organization and they're reluctant to give them up. It's like,
Yeah.
I've got a great person here. This is an
I got
essential
you.
job. I don't want to, I want to be promoted, but I don't want it to be promoted. So that can get in the way, which is understandable because we like to hang on to our top talent. And yet we run a risk if we don't find a way to keep them moving through the pipeline.
Yeah, I think I'd add a third one there, and that is if the underlying culture keeps people in their career track too long.
Yeah.
So if the organization doesn't have a philosophy or a belief of exposing people to, different aspects of the business or different, parts of the business earlier in their career, people tend to get stuck and then it's hard to jump a track, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I do think, the goal of the leadership pipeline should really be not just to recognize the potential talent, but we have to expose them to the leaders and the opportunities that could be available. There's no guarantee, of course, but these are the opportunities that could be available. And so that the people in the pipeline can actually put them in a position for being promoted, but sustainable promotion. Don't just let them pop up there and then pop back down. Like help them get to the position, but be successful in the position. That's one of the best ways to make sure that the pipeline is not failing you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
If you're hearing in this conversation that these are types of the excuses you might hear in your company from your leaders or even from the rising talent, then we would love to have a conversation with you. We'd love to share with you what we've experienced over the last decade and share how we are helping organizations really make sure their pipelines are working for them and the leaders they want to create. Thanks for joining us.